Living abroad in Qatar, and what motorbikes did I ride and own whilst in Qatar? That's what I've been asked to show. I've been having numbers of emails, numbers of messages saying, what did you actually do in Qatar from a motorcycle perspective? What were you owning, etc. I lived in Qatar for just under 2 years, and that was 2017 through to 2019. And I had 4 motorbikes, which we're going to show today. I've got some photos for you. A couple of things that you need to know regarding motorcycles in Qatar, and I'm sure the rules, the laws are still the same now, even in 2026. You must be a resident to own a motorcycle or a car. If you're not a resident, then you must be on a temporary visa, and then you can rent a car. You can't rent a motorbike, so I understand. And as such, it took me a couple of months to go through the process of getting a resident permit that then allowed me to go and purchase a motorcycle. And my first motorcycle was the Triumph Bonneville 865 New Church Edition. So that was probably about just over a year old with virtually no mileage on it. I paid £4,000 for it. It was absolutely wonderful. I did sell it. I should not have sold it. I should have brought it back to the UK, but I didn't. That's the next one. So on that bike, I used to go to work on it all the time. I used to ride it all the time because the weather, generally speaking, is good. You get the phenomenon in the height of summer where it's truly hot, 45, 50 degrees Celsius, where you're riding, and the faster you ride, the hotter it gets. The hotter it just gets. It's unbelievable. So you can't ride more than, let's say, 40 or 50 mile an hour because it just gets too hot on your skin, and you got to slow down. I will admit it, in the height of summer and that, I was riding around in t-shirts and shorts and trainers. There you go, like most people did, because it's just too hot to wear leathers and things like that. In the winter time, where it comes down to 24 degrees at night, 22 degrees at night, then I wore the right gear. Yeah, I did wear the right gear. So that's that problem. I guess there's going to be a few comments on there saying you shouldn't be riding with t-shirts and shorts. I understand what you're saying. I really do understand. And I would never recommend anybody did it. But when you live there and it's your only form of transport other than a taxi, and that's a different conversation. If you want me to elaborate on living in Qatar, happy to do that. So, you know, I could only ride a bike or take a taxi, of which I did take taxis on a number of occasions. So I had the Triumph Bonneville, and that was absolutely great. I then went and bought a Triumph Street Triple. Here's the picture. And that was wonderful. So much power, so much fun. Absolutely crazy machine. And if you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's no one going to be looking at you, and you can really open that kind of bike up and have some great fun. I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm just saying you can do that. And I did. And you know, I was a bit of a stage of life where I was a bit, not wild, but sort of letting things go a bit more than I should we say. It was great times, great times. Let's just go through the process of what's called the Istamara, or if you're in the UK, the MOT. Every year, the bike has to have the equivalent of an MOT. Basically, the guy comes out, he looks at the bike, does it look okay? He then ticks the box. Very little is done. And then when you've done that, you then go through the next door and you get your motor insurance. And the motor insurance is dirt cheap. It really is cheap. And you can upgrade to comprehensive, which I did, which was also very cheap as well. And I did this on all the bikes every year from in the UK, you don't have to have an MOT until it's 3 years old. Over in Qatar, as soon as it's a year old, it needs to go in for its MOT, called an istamara. And then you reinsure the bike, and you just keep on going through that process every year, and you keep on insuring the bike. And because I had multiple bikes at the same time, I would go for an istamara and reinsure that bike. And that bike was insured for anybody with an appropriate riding license or driving license to ride it. Anybody could ride it. So that made it easy for other people to ride the bikes, or me to ride other bikes. Yeah, if they were insured, that meant that anybody could ride it, as long as you had the appropriate license. And then in 2000 and to the latter part of 2018, I bought a couple more bikes. I bought a Triumph Thunderbird 1700. It was virtually a brand new bike. Virtually. I actually bought it from a colleague at work who had bought the bike but had never ridden it. He'd just never ridden it. He bought it brand new. He'd never ridden it. And there's a reason why he'd never ridden it. Because there's not a lot to do in Qatar. You can either go to shopping centres or bars and get, not drunk, but just drink. And because he'd been drinking, he'd never ridden his bike. He used to finish work every day. And I did on occasion. He used to finish work every day and go and have a drink. Yeah. And then he'd get back home and he wouldn't take the bike out, and he'd go drinking at the weekend and never take the bike out. And subsequently, this Thunderbird 1700 was available, and I bought it off him for about £6,000, which was a great deal indeed. And that was the bike I brought back to the UK, and that was the bike I also had an accident on. I will tell you about that in a minute. After I'd bought the Triumph Thunderbird, I was going quite viciously on motorcycles and found a Royal Enfield Bullet 500. Here is the photograph, and this bike caused all the attention. As I rode around Qatar, Doha, etc., everybody commented on this bike. The other bikes, Street Triple, Thunderbird, Bonneville, no comments on that, just normal bikes. But the Royal Enfield, everybody commented on this bike. As you sat at the traffic lights, people are putting their thumbs up and smiling and nodding, yeah? And unbelievable attention that this Royal Enfield brought. And it was a great bike. I sold it on to a guy because I knew I was going to be leaving. And I tried also to sell the Triumph Thunderbird 1700, but no one wanted to buy it. It was too expensive for normal folk to purchase, £6,000. And for those that could afford it, they'd just pay the additional amount and get a brand new one. You know what I mean? So it was in that right in the middle where where you could neither sell it, you could trade it in, I guess, or you could not sell it privately because it was just right in the middle, where no one was interested, or no one could afford it, or if you could afford it, you went and got a brand new one anyway. So I actually shipped that back to the UK. To ship a vehicle from Qatar to the UK, you have to own the vehicle. You have to be a resident, of course, but you have to own the vehicle for at least 6 months, of which I did with the Triumph Thunderbird. And that was then shipped back. The net effect of that, and I'm coming on to the accident in a minute, the net effect of that was that it cost me, let's say, £2,000 to bring it back into the UK, get it registered and all that good stuff, get a number plate, get it insured, and I sold it for £8,000 to a dealer who took it away. So the net effect was zero. I didn't make any profit, I didn't make a loss. It was more hassle than it was worth. I'm just saying, would I do it again? No, but I couldn't get rid of the bike. I just couldn't get rid of the bike. So it was what it was. I thought I'll bring it back to the UK and put it away for a few years of, well, when I brought it back, actually COVID started. So the process of registering it was quite slow because of COVID, but that's another subject. So, the accident. In the city centre, not fast roads. I was in the right-hand lane, which you could call the slow lane, or whatever you want to call it. I was in the right-hand lane. A guy was in a 4x4 Nissan Navara, and he was in the middle lane, and he came over to the right and touched the right-hand side of the motorbike. I kept the bike up. I'm now going to show you photographs of that. It did push the exhaust in, so the mounting bracket for the exhaust had been pushed into the rear wheel and the swinging arm. I did actually ride it back home okay, but that's not the issue that we're talking about here. I had to, when you have an accident in Qatar, both parties or multiple parties go to the police station and report the accident. I knew that I would get blamed. So at the point of the accident, and because I was okay, I got my mobile phone out, and recorded a video with the other guy who was in the Nissan Navara admitting that it was his fault. When we went to the police station, the policeman was talking to the Egyptian guy who was in the Navara, and the Egyptian police, the police officer, speaking in Arabic, the police officer just turned around to me and he said, "It's your fault, it's my fault. White man, rich man, you're always going to take the blame." Of which I knew this would happen, because I've seen it before with other accidents. So I pulled out my mobile phone and showed him the video of me and the other guy in the car, in the truck, having a conversation and him admitting liability, to which then the police officer turned around to him and said it was his fault. You're at a distinct disadvantage if you can't speak Arabic, yeah? Working abroad and living abroad is absolutely fantastic. I came back to the UK, followed the bike back as it got shipped around the world, and then was intending going back to Qatar on my next contract. But then COVID came around and I didn't go back. And that's what happened. Would I recommend people working abroad if you've got the right skills? Absolutely. Go for it. If you've got the right skills, the money is good. I'm not sure what it's like now from a demand perspective from the Middle East. There's a lot of conflict in the Middle East at the moment. But I would definitely do that again. If Qatar called me up today and said, "Do you want to come and stay for a couple of years?" I would possibly go. I would possibly go and buy a couple of motorbikes while out there and go and have a bit of fun, because they won't let me have a driving license for a car. We can talk about that in another video if you're interested. But, you know, it was great fun. They're the bikes that I had. And the one that caused most attention was the Royal Enfield 500. Unbelievable. But just great. It was just a great bike. Used to rattle at 60 mile an hour. But as soon as you pushed through the 60 mile an hour and got up to 70, that rattle and unnervousness of riding seemed to go away. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it meant something to you. Please give the video a like if it did. Do subscribe if you're not subscribed. For those that are subscribed, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And ride safely. Thank you. Bye-bye.